machines don't have, is they're used to just dealing with a big flat piece and cutting that stuff like you did before. But instead, if you do it this way, you can actually do like 3D objects that you CNC down. So I've had like taken these things where I go like, people, oh, you can print this out in 3D, or you can carve it out of wood, which would be even cooler, right?
Wow.
We're live.
When I was in the jewelry business, we had a 4-axis mill.
Yeah.
And I've out in the shop, I've got a little 18-inch square laser.
We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill and Ammon's Hangout, number 340. We skipped last week, but we're back with a vengeance.
Can you feel the vengeance, everybody? Do you feel that vengeance coming at you? What's that?
Everybody say hi. Introduce yourselves. Steve?
Hi, Steve Grinzer, Web Narwhal.
Sarah?
Hi, Zero Altair.
Jeff?
Jeff Ferguson, UCLA, and Amplitude Digital.
And Simon?
Hi, Simon Cox, one of the 515 Simon Coxes in the UK, not the one that plays football, not the one that makes films, not the one that writes for paranormal, neither of the lawyers, not the Lego chef. I'm the one that does SEO, and it's quite warm.
And Terry, how many Terry Van Horns you got there in Ontario?
At least 2. Get calls for the guy all the time. Used to be head of the one of the cults. Masons, that's it.
Oh yeah.
I call them a cult. I don't know if they're a cult or not.
They're not at all. It's like calling the Kiwanis a cult.
Yeah.
And I'm Doc Sheldon, and the only other Sheldon that I'm aware of is Sheldon Cooper, and he occasionally sneaks onto page 1 of the SERPs for my name.
Oh, I have a real problem with that. With Simon Cox, I used to rank 1 on page 1 for years until about 2010, and then the first footballer came along, and there was 3 of them altogether. The last one being an Irish international. I'm not even on page 2 anymore. It's just all full of football stuff.
Yeah,
if you go long tail, you can find me. But
yeah, I'm mixed into page 1 at some point. But for years I owned it too. Early days of search engines, and I guess that was just it. And then this kind of like fire and brimstone Baptist minister that's also named Jeff Ferguson came on the scene too, and took it over. And every now and then he'll even pull the knowledge panel for this one, but it's not consistent, but it's something that just comes up. So I'm like mixed in this one. And then I guess the head of athletics for one of the major American football clubs is also Jeff Ferguson now. But yeah.
I've got a client that used to own page 1 and most of page 2 until a actor from Australia appeared on the scene. And IMDb'd him out of the way.
Wow.
I was funny with my name, not to completely get off topic, but I grew up in the really a very heavy Hispanic neighborhood in Los Angeles. So there weren't a lot of people named Jeff, much less Ferguson. It just didn't come up. It was just not the culture that came around this. So I actually grew up thinking just my name was just the most unique thing in the world. There was no other Jeffs, no other Ferguson. You'll just never run into him. And until I went to college, and then I went to college in neighboring Orange County, which is a much more Caucasian driven county than Los Angeles. And literally on the first day, I was somebody was doing roll call in one of my classes, and like they, oh, Jeff Ferguson. I go here, and the professor goes like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be on the road. And it was then I discovered that the star pitcher for Cal State Fullerton, which is where I got my undergrad, was also named Jeff Ferguson. And I was going like, God, what are the chances of this? So like, they're the only other Jeff Ferguson he's in this. And we never met, but we basically fell in, for each other just constantly. We're always in multiple classes. He was communication major too, and just kept running into it. And just always thought that was funny, just kind of goofy stuff. And then years later, when I started working professionally, my rep for America Online, I remember, was named Jeff Ferguson, but he spelled it with the GEOFF kind of methodology, and we just thought that was kind of funny, and laughed about it, that, you know, two Jeff Fergusons in the room. And years go by again, and that Jeff Ferguson, the AOL rep, calls me from he'd moved up to Northern California, was at a party, and he basically calls me up and goes, "You're not going to believe this. I'm at a party with another Jeff Ferguson." And we started talking about that Jeff Ferguson, and I told the same story about Cal State Fullerton, and it was that same Jeff Ferguson.
Oh,
it
wow.
was like, and he goes like, "You're the other guy. You were the guy that used to, you know, kept calling, answering for me in class." And I go, "No, you could, yes, for me." But he was the more famous one. But yeah, never. He had a blip in professional baseball, but that was about it. But,
Well, it's like my name is fairly less common with my last name. It was me and my dad and my grandfather, as far as we knew. And we moved to Indiana, and my wife took a job teaching at IU. And one of the people in the political science department had my name. And it's like, wait, you're in my hometown. How did we not ever find you?
Wow.
You know, just.
And his name was Steve too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Very weird.
yeah. I see Ferguson everywhere. There's like, we even got a plumbing company that we have in Ferguson. So we're just, anyway, any search stuff we can talk about?
Well, we kind of were, weren't we? Searching our own name.
Yeah, right.
Knowledge panels for the win.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I know I kind of wanted to bring this up and just kind of get this overall feeling from it, from the group, and specifically about Google, since it's a shirt show and everything. And I know we usually talk about SEO, but it kind of hits both of them. Is that does Google in general these days seem very unstable on multiple levels? So, and I'm referring to the fact that both last week and this week, Google Ads had some major outages that actually shut down the interface and goofed up reporting for a little bit. If I remember, it was this Monday that Barry reported that we had an indexing issue that goofed up things for several hours, if not an entire day. And I remember I was thinking about this one, and I go, is this just a fluke? Are they just having a bad week? Or is it something that I kind of wanted to bring up the idea of, like, I'm not thinking about results, right? I'm talking more about the idea of, like, how often does this happen for something that is, you know, that never goes down, that never has problems, that you never hear about this kind of stuff. And suddenly we've got like a run of them just over the last couple of weeks. And I'm sure if we look back at it, there'll be a bunch more. It's like, you just want to go, is everything okay? Is everything, you know, like, is somebody forgetting to pay the power bills? Is somebody forgetting to do whatever? Like, is this a systematic shift in things over there? And, but, you know, because you could spot the warts for days if you wanted to. I mean, we go into big rants about, you know, how their customer service for certain things isn't what it used to be, and a bunch of other stuff either. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think it's an issue that they've always had. They've just been better at covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
I work with enough people who are on AWS at enterprise level, and as often as AWS has problems, and they're not skimping over there, I can't imagine Google doesn't have the exact same issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing, I think,
major hardware issues and things like that.
I think it's important to consider too the fact that all the different functions that Google, just you know, the part that we work with around search, that they're undertaking new functions all the time. These groups are all operating basically independently. Okay, if they go to implement some new algo or some new piece of hardware that could potentially affect another function, you would assume that somebody is taking a look at that from a high level and deciding, yeah, this is safe.
Mhm.
Or, you know, maybe they've just grown faster than their ability to police their own actions has grown.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're doing a lot more now on a daily basis than they were 15, 20 years ago on a daily basis.
Can you
And
imagine how
to
many?
be fair, they've done pretty goddamn well, you know?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. But could you
I give them
imagine
that
how many
much. Yeah.
department level meetings they would have to manage that kind of interaction between their different groups?
I don't think that they would have to have meetings. I think, with a group that can put together the algorithm that they've put together can certainly look at the overlap of hardware functionality, software functionality, database overlap, that sort of thing, and algorithmically determine if there's a risk or not.
Plus I don't think they have meetings anymore. It's just a hive mind thing now. They just kind of all like think and that it's like a Star Trek thing. They all got, they're like the
Sure,
Borg. They all
Jeff.
kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all those meetings are being led by somebody, some Google Analytics rep.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Kind of a pod filled with liquid, lots of probes, that kind of stuff, and just kind of sends it out to the world. So.
They've traditionally not even been able to give out information consistently between departments. When you go and you look at what the SEO side advises you to do on your website for your SEO, and then you look at what the AdWords or ads side tells you to do on your website to do better with your ads and your AdSense, these pieces of advice generally conflict with each other.
Yeah, like 180 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the guys in the ad department are morons.
Well, they're interested in making money because they're the only group at Google that does.
When I went to one of these guys and they were supposed to, fix the account, they sent everything to the homepage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said to the client, well, they just pissed away a couple of grand a years in a day.
Yeah.
So, from here on in, let's just
I'm not
all calls from their ad.
I'm not referring so much to the Google Ads reps as people higher up in the funnel, people who are supervising the documents that are being published to let you know how to set up a website for the best ad clicks for AdSense versus configuring your website for ads versus.
They've never given good advice on that.
Well, no.
I paid a lot of money to get advice like that from Danny when I first started doing it. It was the best money I ever invested, though, in learning something.
I mean, to that point, I guess in the big picture was I can always just imagine like how many things have to go wrong for it to be something that public, I guess, to get out to, I guess, to Steve's point, right? And I remember this is pre-pandemic. This was, so maybe it's about 3-4 years ago, but I was at a search show in Sydney, Australia. The Barry Smith show that was SES for a while, and now it's something else. But Gary Ivas was there in one section, and I remember we asked in kind of like this open session with Google thing, like what exactly happened, because back then there was a major outage. That's something that where the index wasn't getting updated, and it happened for like days. I mean, we're talking, it was a majority of a week where that wasn't happening. It was a really big deal, and we asked him, it's like, Gary, what actually happened there? Like from a geeky side of the fence, like what really came together on this one? And I remember it came down to the idea where somebody in one of the offices in one country, and I think it was the Swedish office or something like that, was that something was supposed to get pushed, and instead somebody deleted what was going to get pushed out, and because that was like the next thing that happened, and it caused just a cavalcade of errors to follow afterwards, where the index wasn't updating and they couldn't get it update, and they didn't have a backup for it anymore. And it was one of the things where it just was one thing after the other. And just to hear him describe it, it was just one of those just massive problems that you usually only see in movies, when a society starts to come unglued and things like that. But in this case, it just happened to be within the walls of Google. And I remember joking, saying, like, so that guy that did that, he's fired or dead now, right? Because I mean, like, how much do you have to actually like screw up within the walls of Google to where the index doesn't update for like a week? That is like the one thing that Google's supposed to do, and it didn't do it for like a week long. And he said, he goes, no, he's fine. He's fine. It was like, you get a good talking to, and this is what it is. And I'm going, well, that's incredibly forgiving. You know, because I could just imagine most companies would have that guy out, you know, with his head on a pike in front of the office, just, you know, as a warning to others, never to do anything like that again, and don't touch things. But
there was an issue.
That's the sort of person you need to promote.
Yeah.
Because if you promote them, they're not going to make the same mistake again, are they?
Yeah. And they were just let's get him somewhere where he can't touch things anymore, and just get him out of this thing.
That works. And there was, I seem to remember, there was a big outage. I don't remember if it was Cloudflare or somebody, where basically they deleted a DNS setting, and the way they did it, there was no way to remote back in to fix it.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I remember that whole story. They wound up having to find somebody who had physical access to the building to go into the server and sit at a keyboard.
That was about a month ago. Yeah, I do remember that one. It took everything out for a stretch too. It was bizarre. Yeah. But again, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's another one just within a relatively short amount of time where you like, it goes, who let that happen? Whatever. It just, and I don't know if it's, you know, because of the Great Resignation. I don't know if they're having, you know, like bunches of shifts over there as far as responsibility goes, and something's falling through the cracks. I don't know, whatever. I mean, I hate to even call them a question, because they, again, to Doc's point, they've had so many years of doing things like near perfectly, or at least invisibly, you know, and they're dealing with something that's so giant, you know, that you really, you know, not any one person can really describe it anymore. No one can test that, no one, anything like that. But and so it works. The fact that it works at all is kind of a miracle on its own. But that said, you know, it's one of things where I think it's because they've had such a nice long record, you really start to wonder, like, what is it? You know, not so we can badmouth them, but it's more along the lines of like, it's just interesting from like an understanding standpoint, like you know, from somebody that you know loves looking at complex systems like this one. You just want to know, like, what actually is causing that kind of problem.
Well, you know, when
they've reached the too big to fail size.
The you know, massive issues like that often are tracked down to minor players. You know, some very minor task. When I was in the Navy, there was a guided missile cruiser got underway in San Diego Harbor. You're going to go out of the harbor, and on the way out, somebody down in the engine room assigned this relatively young and inexperienced fireman to go out and shift from one set of fuel pumps to another set of fuel pumps, so that somebody else could go and clean out the filters on the first set. And when he did it, he shut off the fuel to the generators, which shut off all of the pumps that ran the hydraulic systems, which shut off the compass, which shut off everything. So this DLG, worth probably hundreds of billions of dollars, was suddenly adrift in San Diego Harbor. And this young fireman was about the only person aboard that didn't get disciplined. But he because actually apparently when the investigation showed that he went and did the right thing per the labels that were displayed. Those labels were wrong and always had been wrong, and everybody else knew it. But he had just relatively recently gotten checked out on his procedure, so he wasn't aware of the fact that you got to do it this way rather than this way. And the skipper of the ship almost got relieved of his command. And the engineering officer was transferred, and the chief of the watch was transferred. I mean, it was a massive bloodletting, and this fireman apprentice walked away scot-free. It happens a lot, you know, when there's that sort of a massive interplay of so many different functions. It's usually the thing that would seem the most innocuous, the most harmless, that ends up causing the problem. And I think, you know, when you got something as complex as what Google is doing on a day-to-day basis, it's inevitable there's going to be screw-ups. And yeah, to Jeff's point, probably an awful lot of screw-ups that we never felt or heard about because of their built-in redundancies and the ability to shift from one data center to another to fill in gaps. You know, we don't see those things. They're good at avoiding them, they're good at covering them up, and they're good at recovering from them. But once in a while, some fireman apprentice will come along and step right in the poop, you know?
They'll have sandboxes and systems where they'll be running stuff to be able to isolate sets of servers or data centers, etc. Where I had a case about 15 years ago where we had somebody report it to us a particular site where there wasn't a table wasn't updating it. We were pushing XML out to the server, and we tracked it down eventually to one of the 8 servers not having the right configuration for on the cache for the XML files, and they were like, well, "What do you need XML for?" I feel like, "Well, we're updating that table," and it was recycling every 48 hours instead of every 8 minutes like all the rest were, because we were pushing financial data up onto the server. And from that point onwards, every time we released a new version of the website content, we had to go check all 8 servers, which made things 8 times as long as normal. But it gave us at this level, this is part of our procedures. We rewrote them and said, right, these are all the IP addresses we can get to internally, go and check them one by one. And we changed our procedures to make sure it didn't happen again. Or if it did, we could isolate that server and get it sorted. But yeah, it's you don't know these things are going to happen until they do.
Yeah.
And I think certainly with all the algorithm changes we've seen this year, I think a lot of those they'll try stuff out, see if it breaks anything. And if it doesn't, they'll push it then from the sandbox, maybe out to 1 or 2 data centers, etc. See how that starts to progress. Yeah, that's okay. Give that a tick, push it out a bit further, and then something go, it's not working quite exactly as we thought it would, and they pull it back. And I think that a lot of that happens. Apart from that, all the analytics stuff and all the Google Drive stuff, that will be completely separate. Different data centers, etc. But they'll be running it in similar ways, I suspect strongly, because there's a huge amount of data they must be looking after.
Well, I think too, that they make massive use of the parallel operation stuff so that they have a fallback in case something goes awry. And especially if you're making a shift, a major shift in software or hardware, you want to run parallel just in case you got to take a step back. But I think there's an awful lot of it we never hear about, we never feel the impact of. And the thing that really gets my goat is, like when Google Hangouts, as much as they invested time and energy and money into that to then pull their horns in, and so many things that they have pulled their horns in on and shut down. And I'm wondering if this GA4 is going to be another one of those, because they're getting an awful lot of negative pushback on that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I haven't even dug into it deeply, but from what I've seen, to say it sucks is being charitable.
It's far from ready for live.
Yeah, and the worst of it is we don't even, I guess you could say right now we're parallel, but the problem is you can't go in there and unless you have multiple sites, you can't go in there and play with the GA4 without giving up on your universal. So
I'm running GA4 and universal on a lot of sites side by side.
Yeah.
Really?
Just put both JavaScripts in.
It's the issue I'm finding right now is what used to be a really easy way to set up goals and event tracking has become cumbersome at best. It's more accurate to do it the way they want to do it, but it's not something somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing can set up now successfully. And the lag between setting it up and being able to test if it works has gone from minutes to hours or 24 hours. So after you set it up, then you just kind of go, let's see if that worked. That you wait.
Yeah. GA4 reminds me of when Microsoft decided to go from VB script to what was it called? C#. I just said, you know what? I don't need to do this anymore, and learn PHP. Like anybody who sticks with GA4, you're going to have problems all the way down the line because they don't work in Europe. So, there's going to be issues all the time.
Yep.
Because how they look at things in Europe is different than how Google looks at them. And Google's not willing to change. So, you know, that's why, you know. So
I kind of half expect GA4 to get pushed back, you know, further out, or just pull their horns entirely and say, you know what, we changed our mind. We're just going to stick with the universal and doctor their data the way they want behind the covers.
Right, like the way that even the present universal or whatever the hell they're calling it today, my problem with it has always been tracing sessions, because I want to know where they came from, what page they hit, because you know what, that tells me about my demographics, and that's what I really care about. And they do that terribly. Like most sessions you look at start with a blank.
Mm-hmm.
So makes that useless. However, if you do it yourself, no problem.
I've got some experience with other stuff apart from GA back in the old job, and you know, things like Adobe Analytics, and there were other ones we used to use as well. I can't remember, WebSense, but GA4 seems to be much more pitched towards marketeers and the things they need to understand and use, rather than small people running their own business, etc. I think I quite agree. GA4 is a lot more difficult to set up. And when I start seeing tweets from analytics people that specialize in analytics saying it's horrible, let's go away from it, then I start to worry. Especially what I read today is that actually what they're doing is taking stuff from server-side rendering to client-side rendering for GA4. It's more pushed towards the user. And they may be doing that to get around certain European laws, so they can circumnavigate that. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But the thing that gets me about this, or gets me about it, the thing I'm thinking about it is we've still got nearly just under a year now, and they will make big advances in GA4 before we get there. And I think they will, Terry. they do it with everything else. They tell us, and they will. And the reason is, I think it's geared towards corporates at the moment and what they need, and they'll have analytics specialists who can build those reports out really easily. Mm-hmm. But the likes of us jumping in and trying to build a report like we've had before is terrible. We can understand it. And I think they will solve that before next year. And then we'll go, well, it wasn't so bad after all. And we'll understand. Because the event tracking is brilliant.
If they don't know where people are coming from and what page on your site they landed on, like, all you need to know then, if you have that information, you've got the best information that Google just can't do. And it's easy to do. Like, it's all in the refer. Like, it's not that hard to do. You know, if you want to track stuff on the site as well, yeah, JavaScript, and, you know, like with a persistent connection, right, you can probably do more than Google can.
I think a lot of it has to be centered too around the amount of processing that they're having to do.
I've done it.
Huh?
I've done it. It isn't that much.
No.
Slow
Google.
Down the website.
I'm talking about Google,
okay,
Terry.
Okay. Google.
When you talk about the millions and millions of sites and the millions of visitors to each site and the millions of transactions they would have to track and process per millisecond, that may be what's driving their decision to handle this in larger packets and give up some of that detail, because it's got to be a massive amount of machine cycles.
Yeah. Mostly for free, by the way. That's
and
I mean,
free.
I think that should be pointed out. That's something, this is one of the things they give away completely. That's I don't think that gets brought up enough with a lot of the Google stuff these days, is that everybody gives them a lot of grief, but they do it in a tone of a Karen that thinks it didn't get what it paid for, right? You know, it's like no, like you're actually, this is the free stuff you're talking about. Like, let's change your attitude on this one. It's not
but you know, you look at that and go, how free is that when they have all the data yet refuse to give you the data they've collected about your own website?
No, but
I
also again that you didn't pay for, right? I mean, it's like that's always the trade-off on this one is that like you could, if you wanted to, go out and find somebody else. There are other alternatives to it, but it's like they, and they're only collecting it because you gave them access to in the first place, right? I mean,
Well, I'm of the belief that any data they collect from me, I should be able to get back.
Mhm.
That's true.
And that seems fair. But I also view all of this GA4 like a lot of other projects from Google. They're training and learning GA4 by releasing it early and letting people like us beat on it and go, this sucks, that sucks, this could be better.
Yeah.
We're basically unpaid beta testers, and
which is not a bad business model.
Yeah, you can't knock it for something that that it isn't a revenue source for them.
Well, especially when you compare it to how much a paid analytics package, a good one, costs.
Yeah,
they're not cheap.
If there were good ones, I haven't seen a good one yet. I mean, Adobe Solutions a joke. I mean, that's the only other one I've ever had. In Adobe's tracking solutions, the nightmare. It's it was
what
the
is it from
AW stats at the Apache level, exported from into your own database and
log files. Let's go back to the log files.
Go back to log files. I was trying to remember the name of one of the first ones that all it really was a really nice interface to analyze log files, and it was I can't remember the name. It was one of the first ones. I mean, we're talking like 95.
I had one called Funnel Web.
Yeah,
Funnel Web.
There was a few of them. I remember when there was no analytics. You had there were log file and analysis that you could get.
And
actually, Streaming Frog has a pretty good one, actually.
Yeah, they were still talking, like hits was still the part of the language as far as like what it did, but it's
hits is still the language with some of the idiots out there.
Yeah. It's some of the idiots is a good definition for
comparison.
I used to do that when I get to the analytics portion of my advanced digital marketing class for whatever it is. I was kind of say the way to spot somebody completely out of touch with like something that they're managing is if they still use the term hits. I mean, this thing of it's usually some CEO, some C-level person will come in running and goes like, "How's the campaign doing? Are we getting a lot of hits?" And you're just gonna go, "Oh, this guy, I gotta talk to this guy now. This guy signs my checks."
Yes, we are. We are getting a lot of hits.
Posted a question in a Facebook group. Said, "Can anybody make a recommendation for a better alternative than Stat Counter?" And somebody came back and said, "Yeah, Kitchen Burgers."
He's got to put this little code on the bottom of it, and let's just go back to the ones that it looks like an odometer that you used to put on the bottom of all your pages there.
Yeah, those Stat Counter ones. I guess they're still around too.
Yeah. So one page for Space Jam that they just keep alive, just out of I guess memories or something like that. But yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch this GA4 saga continue to unfold, because tempers seem to be heating up even more on the Karen side. People belly aching about it, and not seeing a whole lot of defense coming from Google. No. You may be right, Steve. It may just be an exercise in getting our algos enough data to learn from.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been forced the last few weeks. We've been doing a lot of GA4 installs and linking to Google Ads, because all the clients are starting to get these emails from all their different vendors saying, "Google Analytics 4, it's coming up," or "If you don't have it now, you're already too late." And it's like, oh God, would you please stop sending these emails? Because you're making my life miserable, because then clients forward them to me and go, "Is this something we need to worry about?" It's like, no, I've got you covered. But
plus
we do it now?
It's one of the automated suggestions that's in Google Ads these days. I think it's worth anywhere between like 6 to 10 points to knock that one out on there. So, you should upgrade to this, and I'm going like, just ignore it for now. But yeah, it's definitely on everybody's radar. But we've had tons of clients ask about it. Go, "You've got a year, and we'll, it's one that's not us. We're not the ones that have to do it. You do, but we'll certainly help." But it's a lot. that was my other thing with the overall design of GA4 is that people that complained about that, you going like, you just kind of out themselves as the fact that they haven't been in Google Ads in the past couple of years, because that's where that reporting interface came from. Like the new GA4 is the reporting interface that Google Ads has had for at least 18 months, if not longer, at this point. And not that we liked it much over there either, but that's kind of the wave of the future.
I landed
Google is
a fairly
counting on a
large
number of sheeple. That's all. That's the thing with GA4. There's so many sheeple out there that no problem.
I landed a fairly large client about a year ago because their previous paid ads agency would not give them a monthly report of all of the keywords they paid on for clicks. And the client needed that report because they forwarded it to the manufacturer who paid for 50% of those ads. And they're like, we're not getting this 50% kickback from the manufacturer because this agency won't do that. And I'm like, well, I'll take over the account and I'll manage it for you. And it took me like 15 minutes to set up a report in analytics that emails everybody on the first of the month. And they're like, why didn't these other guys do this for us? It's like, because they didn't want you to see the data. They wanted you just to see the little line they gave you. You have all of the data now, every month automatically. And they're like, oh, okay, great. And I've had them for a client for a year now because of that one little thing.
Now, with that in mind, and again, there's no wrong answer here, but it's one of those where generally obscuring a certain amount of data from a client is usually out of, there's obviously for self-preservation because you're usually doing something wrong and you just don't want anybody to see it, right? But there's also the idea of just doing it because you just don't want the headaches of a client that is suddenly like digging through those lists and going like, why are we bidding on this, or why is this like coming out?
I'm sure that might be part of it. I think the other part of it is they were specifically a lead gen company. That they weren't necessarily a PPC company. They weren't a Google Ads company. They were a lead gen company. And so they didn't want to share what terms were generating leads, even though they were using Google Ads. On the other side of that coin, this particular client has never once even called me about their ads in a year. We chat once a month. I send them a report. They just simply don't care because we look at that, we look at our cost per conversion and go, that's automatically half of whatever that number is because the manufacturer pays for it. Our numbers are always amazing when you take that into account.
Hell of an ROI on that.
Yeah.
Agencies that get paid a percentage of the spend, they run campaigns that are just garbage and they don't want their client to see.
No, we don't.
You don't, Steve, but I've seen it.
I don't.
That's how I got my biggest client.
No,
I showed him the campaign and said, right here, they run this when it hits this number, and could show the guy the data, the times, everything. I got the contract at the end of the month.
That's, and unfortunately you can't use, like everything else, you can't use that as a blanket statement because there are a lot of agencies that charge a percentage of ad spend. It frees us up from having to worry about the hours.
Yeah, that's the way I
you're spending this many hours on it. Yeah.
Funny, Steve, and Terry, to your point on the quality of work to it, and it kind of goes back to what Steve's saying about the list of keywords too, is that most of the competitive reporting things that are out there, your SpyFu, your whatever, SpyFu is the one I tend to make fun of the most, but pardon for the dog, is they always kind of come back and say like, hey, get these great reports that show your competitors' most profitable terms. One, I give them a lot of grief because you actually can't see how profitable they are because you just don't have the data for it. But the funny thing is that I always kind of laugh at the idea of like seeing your competitors' terms, like you've got some like a deeper inside track there. Because I'm going, I go, spoken like somebody who's not audited as many Google Ads accounts as I have, right? Just to kind of see the train wreck that is most Google Ads campaigns. They're nightmarish. They're big and small and whatever it is. we've done Fortune 500, we've done small companies, what it is, where they're these completely messed things where they're spending money on terms that are haven't made them a dime in years, right? In years and years and whatever. And meanwhile, that term is still getting picked up by all these competitive terms, and then somebody else picks it up and starts doing it because this thing never did it. I'm going like, yeah, don't trust those. Use them for inspiration, but don't just copy and paste that stuff in there. You have no idea what's going on.
Even my own accounts, even my own campaigns, after a certain amount of time, they tend to start to look like garbage.
Yeah.
And I think that it partially has to do with the Google AI starting to go down the wrong path, which happens on a fairly regular basis. And I mean, I find myself on I don't want to call it a real regular, but on a fairly regular basis, scrapping campaigns and starting them over, or building brand new campaigns from scratch to reset things and winding them up as we wind others down. And I've seen, I mean, I've taken over accounts for clients where it's clear that the ad campaign hasn't been touched in 3 years. It's just been autopilot, and they've been paying the other guy every month for 3 years, and he's literally, you look at the history that Google Ads tracks for you, and there's nothing. It's completely blank for years.
Yeah.
There's got to be something in here. You had to have done something that would trigger this.
Went from A team to B team to C team to the intern, as far as who was managing this thing. And was really, and that happens in the gargantuan agencies more often than not. I've really seen that also, or just in-house teams. That's the responsibility just gets passed around until you've got somebody right out of school that's managing the account, and they don't touch it because they're also doing 80 other things that they're not getting paid enough for. But
the campaign's making enough money to be okay, so we're just going to ignore it.
Mega companies, that we see that quite a bunch. Like we'll step in these things and we'll out of them, usually because it's usually it's a friend of mine is now the vice president of marketing or the CMO, whatever it is. And they said, Jeff, come in and take a look at this thing, whatever it is, and we'll find like a nightmare. And it's because that kind of stuff gets lost in really big companies. That type of inefficiency, you just over time, you just don't notice it until the economy goes south, right? Which is about ready to happen, probably. So like you're good looking for a lot more business for guys like Steve and I that actually dive into these things, because so we need to get more efficiency. Our CPAs have gone to hell. This is this.
The efficiency problem is 90% the way that they match. When it was exact match, phrase match, and whatever you want match, you could do a lot. It was a lot more efficient because you could actually, I just used mainly exact match because I knew what the hell people are actually clicking on. And, and I never used the Google network because that's for fools.
Yeah. The days of that. And I mean, the match types are and the kind of the evolution of that, I think was just one of the early symptoms. I think what you're really seeing here is obviously and the new campaign type performance max is just the best indicator of it, of like where Google Ads is going, where it's going to be all black box. It's going to be like just put in a budget and we'll take it from here kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll take your money is
and the results will look pretty good, and they'll probably look even better for, I'd say, 50, 60, 70% of the people that use Google Ads that actually don't have professional help doing that. But then you've got all the other ones that it's not going to be that great, and you're going to hear a lot more complaints out of it. But I mean, Performance Max is set up right now to where you actually can't even remove your own brand terms and move them out without a Google rep helping you. I mean, it's something that it's like they've designed this thing. It's an Apple product. You can't take the screws out. You can't fix it. It's the way it works. So they're kind of headed to that kind of system, and every other piece of the puzzle, whether it be the Performance Max campaigns or the way their dynamic creative, the way they're killing off expanded ads and moving into this new type. All of these things are just more and more like, don't touch anything, we'll handle it. Just give us the budget kind of thing, it'll break a lot of hearts. There's entire people that made their careers on that kind of deep understanding of these types of things, but they'll probably miss it. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of other agencies and companies and things like that that'll love the day, because they go, well, it's one thing we don't have to worry about, just let them handle it and everything will be fine. And until the DOJ comes knocking and ask them why they can't see their own stuff on the inside. But All right, Doc, we got anything, any other news? Anything we want to cover?
I did not gather any topics. We're just kind of freewheeling today.
Nice.
So,
Kind of freewheeling
GS
pretty much every time.
GSC had an update today. You can now verify your website using CNAME in the DNS. And I was like, hang on a second, I've been doing that for years. So Barry Schwartz put it up, and I called him out and I said, old news. He came back and said, no, it's new. And we had a bit back and forth with it. And I went and checked a load of my old stuff. And I have sites with using CNAME as a verification for search console. And then Daniel pointed out that actually Webmaster Tools did it that way, and it actually, you couldn't do it with GSC. So they've now brought it back in.
Yeah,
which is good news. And I do love the DNS way of verifying sites, because as soon as you've done that, you then, two things, you then are able to do all the variants instantly, just press a button and you just verify them instantly, which is good. And also, if you're not the person also coding the site, you don't have that problem that I've had in the past where somebody goes and rebuilds the site and forgets to put the authentication code in because they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You've just lost all your GSC completely.
Oh, that never happened, Simon.
Happened to me about 5 times.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Quite a few. It was a few years back ago they had that as an option.
Yeah.
Well, yes. No, I had them.
When you signed up, it was an option.
We can verify, Simon. You're
verify
not
by-
crazy. Yeah, we can. I think we can all remember
Yeah, I
that. That was a
remember
thing
that.
before. Yeah.
I went back
liked
through my
that.
documentation, and my documentation has got the text version, not the CNAME. And I suddenly twigged. I got documentation I sent out to clients and say, please do this. And I suddenly remembered that I've always tried CNAME, and it never worked in the last couple of years. It hadn't worked at all. I was like, I'll use text. I don't use text, but I use the text thing. And that was it. They hadn't actually brought it over to GSC from Webmaster Tools. But it's there now, from today. But the other thing as well is the sites that I had verified that way hadn't stopped verifying. So they were still honoring that, which was interesting.
Yeah. So they didn't sunset it. They just kind of hid it. That's interesting.
I think it was
Basically,
for
yeah.
newer sites. They just quit giving that as an option.
It may have been an oversight, may have been a deliberate exclusion.
There's too much work at the time. So someone said, we'll put that on the back burner.
Yeah.
I forgot that was a feature. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
One
Nobody
thing that,
uses that, right?
I always use the file on GSC
Oh, the upload. Yeah.
because that way you can stop. Like there's a problem because people who have access to analytics, they can get into the GSC account too. So it's best to have a method for each one. Like use one, the invite, and the other one, put the file in and verify it that way. The good thing is that file works for every client. So when I got a new client, I just give them that file and say, put that in the root, and I had access to everything. I was working with a lawyer out of Houston, and he had I worked on 15 sites anyway. He said, that's how I did it. I'd give him the robots text that give me access to GSC. I'd look up the site, do the work. Yeah, works really well. And when you want to get done, right, you don't have to mess with it in your verification in your GSC. They remove the file. You remove the file when you're done, and it removes it from the list. So you don't have all that shit to manage. Just saying.
When you get into the corporate levels, though, they don't like files they don't understand being there. And you give them something, so stick this Google file up there, they're like, no, we're not putting that there. But then that's why I go and talk to DNS teams. They'll be separate from the production teams. And they'll say, look, do this. First of all, they go, no, we're not doing that. And then I show them Google documentation, and they normally come back and say, yeah, fine, we'll do it. And it's simple, just turn that off as well. Just write to DNS team and say, right, please get rid of that record. but normally if you've got somebody who what I like to do is get somebody in the business to actually own that, and then they give me access by giving me manager access or whatever. And people do need to look after their or have policies and look after who's actually got access into their GSEs. We've talked about this before, haven't we, a few weeks ago? Yeah, I always like to do an audit and then take it to the business and say, right, who are these people? They go, I don't know. Get rid of them.
I still got clients from 9 or 10 years ago on my that I still have access to.
Which is great, because then you can go and see if they've been affected by something.
I had a major SEO company go right to my client with information from the analytics. When I looked, they were an old user. I just said to the client, he goes out of the analytics, or, because I'm not going to, let's say, I'm not going to defend what this idiot has told you. You can hire him if you want, but, say goodbye. So I'm going to remove them from analytics because I don't want any more of this foolishness.
Yeah, but Terry, if you do that, how am I supposed to come back later and tell that the guys that that you hired after me are screwing up if I can't see it anymore?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to poison the well if you take away my access? I don't like this idea at all.
I usually wait until I've been with a client for 6 months to a year, and then I approach them and say, look, here's all of the people who have access to your Google Ads account, your analytics, your search console, all of these. How many of them do you still want to have access? And they're like, oh my God, why do these people still have access? It's like, because you didn't take it away from them when they left.
Right.
Oh, I have to do that? So it makes it easier. Otherwise, you're trusting them to remove themselves.
Well, there was a time when you couldn't remove them.
Yep, that's a fact.
Yeah, it took some answer.
They finally
quite a long while
caught on that, hey, we might want to delete some of these.
Simon, I always like you're talking about doing the audit of the pixels and everything. One of my favorite things to do is going back through, usually after you've taken over the business, like you picked up this business, you go back and you do like a pixel audit, and it's usually part of the same breath as making the site faster overall. But you go through and just realize there's been, just pixel after pixel after pixel has been added for years. If you go through their Google Tag Manager, if you're lucky, if not, it's just on a given page where it's just alluded to it. But and just seeing this barrage of stuff, and it just play this game of bingo where it's like, does this company even exist anymore? Like this, whatever pixel this is for, like this, this one specific programmatic partner or something like that. Is that company even there, or does it even exist, or is it tracker? Or this is a GA version from like a decade ago or something along those lines that's just mucking up the works over there. And then yeah.
one of the clients I'm working on setting up GA4 for them, I was in their tag manager account finally. And I'm like, there are tags and triggers in there that have not fired in years. I mean, a lot of years. And they're like, oh, we don't know what any of that stuff is. It's like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make copies of all of this. And then I'm going to start turning shit off. Scream if something goes wrong.
Some partner goes, hey, it was us, don't turn that off.
Yeah, and you'll hear some weird, somebody somewhere in some office, and their report was dependent on some weird thing that you didn't even know was working.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, we'll turn it back on. It's not a problem. I kept all of that information.
We did that,
or we can just hit the reset button and see what happens.
Yeah, we did that once, and it killed off some tracking that was going on. I can't remember the company that was, but it was some type of analysis software. And again, this is for some mega corporation, right, where they've lost track of everything they're paying for after a certain amount of time. But we moved this pixel, and it means that whatever reporting they were doing went sideways, and so that company had to reach out to them saying like, "Hey, our pixel isn't working anymore." And basically, somebody in marketing loaded up and goes, I didn't even realize we were still paying you. Let me fix that. And so they ended up losing the business for this tracking that nobody was looking at this report anymore because they basically said, hey, this, it just makes you like, puts these poor people in a position to go, do we tell them they've just been paying their check every month?
Yeah, I was in Data Studio and built a analytics report for a company, and we built it on my access to their accounts, not realizing that even though I shared it to them and they had their own access, when they removed me, all of those sheets quit working. And it's like, well, that's a stupid way of doing things. I mean, the person who has access to the data source, regardless whether it's me or them, should still have access to this report. And so I wound up sitting on a virtual console through his login and rebuilding the reports for him on his stuff. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me. This, or you could just leave me with access for this stuff forever because I'm not going anywhere. Maybe.
Maybe.
We got about 5 minutes left. We want to go around the table and see what everybody's got on their game board for the week. Sarah, you got to write some words?
Oh yeah, I'm writing some words. I am what am I doing this week? I have a long blog article that I'm writing. I am rewriting some text for an ebook that is going out attached to an email sequence. I am writing another blog on a totally different subject. And also I had this weird thing happen this morning where a new SEO person said, hey, SEMrush says all these pages are loading really slow. And I said, well, is it the images? Because there are a lot of images on that particular site. And he checked me, he said no. And I said, well, why don't you just speed test those? Because maybe SEMrush is wrong. And about 5 minutes later, he came back and said, yeah, SEMrush is drunk. And I'm like, yep, it happens, just eternal vigilance. So, yeah, writing. Yep.
Simon, what are you up to?
I'm not sure, to be honest, but all the spare time I've got, I should be making more backgrounds like this one in Midjourney, which is an AI tool where you type in what you want to see. So this I created, and I'm doing loads of images for a site that I'm building, which I think I've mentioned before. So that should be fun. Otherwise, things. I've got a couple of things to do. Yeah, I've got a migration coming up later this year. I've got to start preparing for, which is always fun.
Steve?
Onboarding a new client this week. That should be a lot of entertainment there. And other than that, mostly head down. It's too hot to be outside.
Terry?
I think I'll just take it easy this week. I got Dr. Ho's back thing, so I'll be learning that, I guess.
You practice your retirement skills.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I am just in big time catch up mode. I was just out of commission all last week with COVID, so I've just been every email that I buried, everything that I shifted a week forward as far as things go. So it's there, but we do have some new business coming in on a couple of fronts, actually 2 new clients. So it's there's that onboarding process is kicked in, and then a couple of new audits that are going in, and then one kind of behind the scenes audit for a potentially new Google Ads customer, which would be nice on that front. So yeah, things are moving. And then next week I've got in-person classes for one of my sessions at UCLA is kicking in next week, so I've got to retool all my due dates and all those kinds of things as well this weekend.
Yeah, and I was kind of in the same mode the last week or so. I had my second bout with COVID, and that's fun. Not nearly as bad as the first one, though. And onboarding some stuff, wrapping up a project. Well, I shouldn't say wrapping up the first phase of a project, working with a colleague on. And Steve and Rob and I are continuing to crank up Web Narwhal. That's being fun.
Oh, cool.
Keep logging new clients there. Every little bit helps. But that's basically what I'll be doing this week, is just getting caught up after losing most of the week. And I just got the wonderful news last night that my entire municipality is going to be without water from August 25th through August 8th.
You mean July 25th?
July 25th to
I'm
August
sorry,
8th?
July 25th through August 8th. So anybody that finds themselves downwind of me after 2 weeks of no showers might want to breathe through your mouth.
Pass.
Not
That's
it.
a long
Not it.
time without water. So that's
I'm
like
telling
no
you.
water, no
Yep.
washing, no flushing.
Well, with flushing and washing is not a problem, but showering is different. Unless you want to just do it out of a bucket. We've got a cistern, so I can store enough water.
Oh, you
to
do?
get
Okay.
we can flush toilets and stuff like that. But
Should we send you some Axe body spray?
yeah, in a drum.
That's true. That's how they sell it. That's the preferred way of selling X body spray is to buy the drum.
Anyway, thanks everybody. I
Have a
think
great
that
week.
wraps us up for the day.
Have a good week.
Everyone have a good one.
Thanks all.